Cockroaches might seem like the ultimate survivors, but would they really thrive in a nuclear wasteland? The truth is, while they can tolerate more radiation than humans, they're not invincible. Many other insects share this resilience, and even roaches wouldn't survive high radiation doses. Wolf-pack hierarchy. This term comes from early studies observing unrelated wolves in captivity, and it doesn't reflect how real wolf packs function. In the wild, wolf packs are more like families. The breeding parents lead the pack, raising their pups until they're ready to venture out and form their own families. There are no dramatic takeovers by younger wolves. The hierarchy is based on age and breeding status, not dominance contests. The term 420 didn't originate from the Los Angeles Police or Penal Code for marijuana use. Instead, it started in 1971 at San Rafael High School, where a group of students would meet to smoke at 4:20 p.m. The idea of a hidden elephant graveyard is a myth. Elephants are social creatures, and there's no evidence they abandon their herds at the end of their lives. This misconception likely arose from stories of lost treasures, but it's simply not true. Hold on, goldfish memory isn't a thing. Forget the 3-second rule. Goldfish aren't memory duds. Studies show they can remember things for up to 3 months. This myth might stem from their environment's small tanks, and repetitive routines don't challenge their memories much. The expression rule of thumb didn't originate from an English law allowing men to beat their wives with a stick no thicker than their thumb. It comes from various trades in the 17th century, where measurements were made by comparison to the width or length of a thumb. Sunflowers don't chase the sun all day. While young buds bend and follow the sun's path, mature ones face east and soak up the morning rays. Those famous white statues in museums were originally painted in bright colors. Over time, the paint faded away, leaving them bare. Some lucky statues still show hints of their colorful past. Cheers! But not from a skull. Vikings weren't guzzling mead from enemy skulls. This tough image comes from a misunderstanding of their poems, where skull branches referred to a fancy way of saying horns for drinking. Xmas wasn't created to remove Christ from Christmas. The X in Xmas stands for the Greek letter chi, which is the first letter of the Greek word for Christ. People started using X as a short way to write Christ in English around 1100. Xmas appeared in 1551, and Xmas came about in 1721. So, Xmas has been around for centuries and has nothing to do with taking Christ out of Christmas. Hold on! Lemmings aren't suicidal. This misconception has been around for centuries, but gained steam thanks to a stage scene in the 1958 film White Wilderness, where filmmakers even pushed lemmings off cliff. In reality, lemmings are small rodents with population booms that lead to large migrations. Sometimes, these migrations involve swimming across water. Lemmings have no inherent suicidal tendency. Their natural instinct is for survival, not self-destruction. That ear-splitting screech in movies isn't the bald eagle. The majestic bald eagle's call isn't actually that ear-splitting cry you hear in movies. Surprise! That belongs to the red-tailed hawk. In reality, bald eagles have a much milder vocal repertoire, with softer chirps that might even remind you of seagulls. Tiny legs. Big myth. Daddy long legs. Falsity may look creepy, but they're not the super venomous spiders some people fear. Even though their fangs can technically pierce our skin, the amount of venom is tiny, just a mild tingle for a few seconds. In fact, other creatures like harvestmen and crane flies are sometimes called daddy longlegs too, and they're also harmless. While the Amazon rainforest is crucial, it doesn't produce 20% of Earth's oxygen. A study got misinterpreted. Rainforests do create oxygen, but plant and animal respiration balances it out. The oxygen we breathe built up over billions of years, not just from the Amazon. Drowning often looks quiet, not like the movies. People in trouble can't yell or wave due to a natural reflex. Stay vigilant. Stepping on a rusty nail can be scary, but tetanus doesn't come from the rust itself. It's caused by bacteria that like dirty places. That's why a rusty nail might have them, but so could other things that have been in the dirt. Make sure your tetanus shot is up to date. Sometimes people think the way people use be an African American vernacular English is wrong, like it's just replacing is all the time. But that's not quite true. There might be a reason for using be in a special way, like showing something someone always does or something that happens a lot. Lightning doesn't care where it's been before. Within a storm, it repeatedly targets prominent objects like the Empire State Building in New York, which gets hit an average of 23 times a year. People in the Middle Ages didn't all die young. It's true many babies didn't survive, but adults who made it to adulthood often lived well into their 40s, 50s, or even 60s. This misconception comes from counting babies who didn't survive infancy, which brings down the average lifespan. Starlings in Central Park? Shakespeare to blame? Not quite. While these glossy blackbirds were indeed released in 1890, the idea that it was to bring all of Shakespeare's feathered friends to life seems to be a myth that took flight in the 1940s. Those gruesome Iron Maidens in movies? Totally fake. These inventions were cooked up in the 18th century, not used by medieval torturers. Accused individuals during the Salem witch trials were not burned at the stake, as commonly believed. This misconception might stem from the fact that burning was a punishment for witchcraft in Europe. In Salem, convicted witches were hanged, while others died in prison or under harsh interrogation. Columbus and Flat Earth? No way. His problem wasn't a flat world, but underestimating the distance to Asia. That threw people off course on funding his voyage. In fact, educated people during Columbus's time already knew the world was round, thanks to earlier explorers and scholars like Aristotle and Eratosthenes. No need to be scared of dragons on old maps. That famous "here be dragons" warning was actually very rare. Sailors were more likely to find lions marking the unknown parts of the world. While the phrase might have appeared on a few maps, it wasn't widely used by cartographers. The volcanic blast at Thera did hit the Minoans hard, likely causing earthquakes and tsunamis. But it wasn't the final blow. The Minoan civilization actually lasted for centuries after the eruption. There's a common belief that the Aztecs worshipped the Spanish conquistador Hern N. Cortés and his crew as gods. However, this idea likely comes from later stories, not from what actually happened during the conquest. You might have heard that John Fitzgerald Kennedy accidentally called himself a jelly donut during his famous Berlin speech. The truth is, his famous line, "Ich bin ein Berliner," actually translates accurately to "I am a Berliner" in German. Napoleon's troops did not shoot off the nose of the Great Sphinx during the French campaign in Egypt. Historical records indicate the nose was already missing long before Napoleon's time. Hollywood got it wrong. Ever wonder what happens in space? Not in the movies. The danger isn't your body exploding. Instead, the lack of air would cause you to pass out quickly, making a peaceful sleep seem like a dream. King Christian X of Denmark did not wear a yellow star to protest Nazi identification measures against Jews. In reality, Jews in Denmark were not subjected to such measures, and the Danish resistance facilitated their escape. Those black and white clad pilgrims we see in pictures? Not quite accurate. The Plymouth colonists dressed more like late Elizabethans, not characters from a costume shop. This iconic image actually popped up much later, in the 19th century. You might picture a red phone on each leader's desk, a direct line to prevent nuclear war, while the Moscow-Washington hotline wasn't a phone at all, but a slow messaging system. It also connects the Kremlin to the Pentagon, not the White House. The Nazis did not refer to themselves as Nazis. Instead, they identified as National Socialists or party comrades. The term Nazi was originally a derogatory label used by opponents and later adopted colloquially. Ever heard someone say "irregardless" and wondered if it's a real word? The answer is yes, it is. While irregardless is technically a word because dictionaries recognize it, many people consider it non-standard English. It essentially means the same thing as regardless, which is a more widely accepted and clear choice. So, the next time you hear irregardless, you'll know it's technically okay.